All right. Contrary to certain wishes, my name is not Will Montgomery. I'm Dee Margo. Welcome. We'll call this meeting to order. It is now 9:06 a.m. We don't have our board secretary here today, so I would ask Dr. Rice to please take roll.
Mr. Angelo.
Present.
Mr. Margo.
Here.
Mr. Montgomery.
Very much here.
Dr. Patel.
Yeah.
Myself, Dr. Rosenfeld.
Here.
We have a quorum, sir.
All right. I think our first order of business, I want to welcome our newest member, Dr. Ambrosio Hernandez. Lieutenant Governor Patrick appointed Dr. Hernandez to the CPRIT Oversight Committee last week. Dr. Hernandez, if you would please stand, and I will administer the oath of office. Chair recognizes Dr. Cummings. All right. Dave, we're going to swear Dr. Hernandez in. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, please repeat after me. I, Ambrosio Hernandez,
I, Ambrosio Hernandez,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of CPRIT Oversight Committee Member of the state of Texas
of the Office of CPRIT Oversight Committee Member of the State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend
and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States and this state.
the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
I feel so powerful.
That was good.
I know why Montgomery didn't want to give it up. Members, the draft minutes from the November 20th Oversight Committee are available in your agenda packet behind tab 1. Are there any corrections to the minutes as circulated? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 20th Oversight Committee meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now go to our Chief Executive Officer report from Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As indicated on page 2-3 in your books, prior to any action at the February 19th Oversight Committee meeting, $246 million is available from the 2020 appropriations for grant awards. The Program Integration Committee recommends $78 million in awards for all three programs. Therefore, if you approve the PIC's recommendations, there will be a balance of $168 million remaining for grants at the May and August meetings. The second item I'd like to report on is we have distributed our statutorily required annual report to the required state leadership. It is posted on our website. We are in the process of installing hot links on it to make it a link to more information that is contained on the website. The report itself is significantly revised from last year's, presents many of the statutorily required components using infographics that highlight important program and grantee information. Note that since the report covers fiscal year 2019, the metrics won't be up to date for the November and today's meetings. I would like to give special kudos to Kristen for taking the lead this year with graphic support from Chris Baer of our IT staff and layout support from Melanie Cleveland. The next item I have is I like to introduce new staff to the board since they work for you, and hopefully Tyler Wisdom is here. Tyler Wisdom's the guy with the Star Wars headphones.
Feed and audio are live.
Okay, now if you'll turn to page 2-24 in your book. By state law, I am required to report at least annually to you on the progress and continued merit of each research program. I am pleased to report that fiscal year 2019 was another year of progress for CPRIT and all three of its programs. As shown in the memo, all three of our programs show merit and progress and should continue operations. With that, I believe that concludes my CEO report, Mr. Presiding Officer.
Are there any questions for Mr. Roberts? Thank you. Members, it is my understanding that we have a request. Is she here? All right, we'll skip that one. All right. The chair recognizes Mr. Burgess to present the Chief Compliance Officer's report and to provide the compliance certification for the proposed awards.
Good morning, Mr. Margot. Happy to be here this morning. You'll find my compliance officer report behind tab 3 in your booklet. And I just want to highlight a couple of points from the report. The first is training and support. So we require annual grantee training, and you may recall this past year, calendar year 19, we developed 3 trainings, one specific to each program. Prior to that, we had one set of materials and everybody had to attend that training. And it was a great opportunity that we took to develop specific trainings, and we could really drill down specific to each program, a lot more interactive. For instance, in the past, prevention grantees had to sit through the entire training section on match when it didn't really apply to them. So we're doing that again this year. Our first series is in March, next month, March 11 and 12. And that's a great opportunity too, because we bring together compliance staff, grant accountant staff, operations program, and we're all in the room together so we can answer the questions and kind of drill down. So we're excited about that because compliance is exciting. And thank you. Thank you, Will. Thank you. Yes. The second issue I wanted to highlight is you look at the chart on 3-3, the delinquent reporting. So we have, on average, 560 active grants, and with that, we get about 560 reports in every month, and we monitor those, we track those. We meet on a weekly basis as a staff, and we're all working together to make sure that grantees are submitting those. You can see in the chart, this is for FY20, the dotted line represents sort of our 5% threshold, and we're well below that. Matter of fact, this week's report, we had 0 delinquent reports for this week, so it's a great thing. So. Also, I apologize, your Christmas gifts aren't here yet, but I did order you all pins that said I love compliance officers, and you should be getting that shortly. That's all that I have for my report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burgess? Mr. Montgomery?
This chart of delinquent reports is always going down. You didn't change the y-axis or the numbers on there or anything, did you, just to make it always look good? Just wondering. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
No, sir. No, sir, I
Don't
did
mean
not.
to be flippant. Great job. Terrific.
Thank you. I changed the scale. No, I did not. Just for the record.
Mr. Burgess will now provide the compliance certification report for the proposed awards at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Margot. In the grant award booklet on page 115, you'll find my compliance certification report. The memo was dated February the 6th, and that was made available to you in the portal. My certification details every step in the application process, and central to the certification is our grant award pedigree, and beginning with the approval of the RFA by the program officer all the way through Oversight Committee approval. I reviewed the supporting documentation for each and every peer review meeting and review council meeting. And those include sign-out sheets, third-party observer reports, post-review statements, attendance sheets. I also attended the PIC meeting on February the 4th and attest that that process followed our agency rules. And after reviewing the supporting documentation and in consultation with CPRIT staff and GDIT, that's our third-party grants administrator, I certify that the review process for the academic research, product development research, and prevention award recommendations for your consideration this morning followed all applicable laws and agency administrative rules, and I am happy to answer any questions you have about my certification.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burgess? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The chair recognizes Dr. Wilson to provide the academic research program update and to introduce the Program Integration Committee's grant award recommendations.
Let me ask you to begin with me in the Oversight Committee meeting booklet on tab 4. And allows me to briefly update you on the status of upcoming RFA and review panel activities for the second cycle of this fiscal year 20. We have now received 149 applications in response to core facility, high impact, high risk, and early clinical investigator award mechanism, and a follow-on second issue of our collaborative action program to reduce liver cancer mortality. These applications will be reviewed later this spring and will be brought to the PIC and to you in August. For the fiscal year 21 first cycle, you'll recall that the Oversight Committee has approved a series of RFAs that have been recently released. They focus on individual investigator research targeted applications and a research training award application. And these will be received in June of this year and reviewed next fall, brought to you in February of the following year. In addition to this activity, I want to mention, and I believe that Mr. Roberts will be talking about this later today, the initiatives that the research program and Mr. Roberts have made to begin to visit with constituents in areas of the state which to date have been underrepresented by CPRIT awards, specifically visits to the UT RGV campus, Texas Tech Health Science Center in Lubbock, as well as Texas Health Science Center in El Paso and UTEP. And in all of these encounters in the last several months, meeting with both administrative leadership as well as cancer investigators, learning about the aspirations that these institutions have for building cancer research and outreach programs in their communities. And I think that our task as we go forward is to begin to think about how CPRIT will be able to help catalyze these aspirations in the future. So just catching you up on some of those activities. I'm now going to discuss the Program Integration Committee recommendations for this quarter. If you will follow on with me in the proposed grant review book on page 8. To begin, if I could call to your attention Table 1. We're reporting on 4 mechanisms for individual investigator research awards and 3 for our recruitment awards. You'll notice that there are 2 columns. The first column reports the Scientific Review Council recommendations, and the second, the Program Integration Committee. The Program Integration Committee elected to recommend to you a subset of the Scientific Review Council's recommendations, mainly because we are holding back 13 approved applications based on their scores, because we don't yet know whether sufficient funds will be available in this fiscal year to support all of the priority programs in CPRIT. So you'll be hearing more about those, potentially those applications in August. The program priorities that are addressed by these recommendations are addressed in Table 2. And if you will, instead of my covering all 36 of the applications that are being recommended, I want to call to your attention a couple of important factors. One is that all of these applications scored a score of 2.7 or better. They represent 13 different Texas institutions of higher learning and represent 9% of the applications that we received in this past funding round. So a highly competitive group of applications. And just to highlight a couple that I think are particularly tell a particularly important story in the life of our CPRIT programs. If you'll look at page 13, Table 4, one of the 4 childhood targeted Investigator-Initiated Research Awards is being recommended to Dr. Eric Olson at UT Southwestern. Dr. Olson, as many of you may know, is a renowned scientist that's focused his entire career on understanding muscle biology and how to apply the information to important diseases of the heart, inherited diseases of muscle dystrophy, etc. Interestingly, that information or that experience led him to collaborate with CPRIT-funded pediatric oncologists at UT Southwestern that had built important models in rhabdomyosarcoma, a disease really one of the remaining challenges in pediatric cancer, and discovered with his collaborators a potential target that differentiates or causes the rhabdomyosarcoma cell to not differentiate. So building on his muscle biology expertise, identified a unique mechanism that is apparently responsible, at least in part, for this childhood cancer. And now with this CPRIT award, we'll use that information to go forward to identify potential therapeutic targets and then drug therapeutics for this disease. So I think the point of this discussion is to show you how CPRIT's investment in the last decade has really set up some important new opportunities in Texas for a disease which we all recognize as a high priority for going forward. The second point that I want to bring to your attention is on page 14, Table 5. And you'll recall a couple of years ago at the encouragement of Mr. Roberts and our University Advisory Committee, we established a Investigator Research Award mechanism that focused on clinical translation. And the idea here was to support specifically applications that would help move discovery into treating patients or evaluating the efficacy of treatment of patients. And here are 3 very interesting applications that do this, all from MD Anderson, focusing on pancreatic cancer and the reason for immunosuppression and potentially unlocking the potential for treatment of pancreatic cancer with new immunotherapeutics, a program in head and neck cancer, and a program that's really quite interesting in colorectal cancer that's involving 10 health centers across Texas to collaborate to identify parameters that would predict those individuals who have potentially curative surgery for colon cancer, to identify those individuals and free them up from not having to have the post-surgery chemotherapy, which is now recommended. At any rate, with that, I'll pause for a minute to ask if any questions about the Individual Investigator Research Award slate before I move on to the scholars.
I have one question, but it's about the overall slate.
Go ahead.
You said the success rate for grantees was about 9%. Is that a result of just the larger number of applications, or have the criteria? Because usually it's about 12%, I think. So is it just a larger number of applications, or is it the criteria or the committees are getting tighter?
Yes. So actually, the success rate has remained about the same. It was 12% this time, but you'll recall that we were holding back a subset of about 20% because of the funding issues. So hopefully, if all works out, those have an opportunity for being supported.
So the reduction is only because of the holdback.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
I have a comment and question. First and foremost, Mr. Wilson, thank you for your time yesterday. I know we spent quite a bit of hours, actually. They're very nice, and the staff, and Wayne with me yesterday to go over a couple of documents and the bylaws and such. And thank you for your service. You're doing a great job.
Thank you for
Texas
being here.
is truly honored to have you on board. We're reaping the rewards of your efforts and your team. A couple of things I'm glad you touched on. If you could share with us a little bit more, because I've been asked a few times, what does high impact mean exactly to the scientists when they say we fund high impact programs? And I said, well, I'll ask when I get there, and I'm sure they'll elaborate in a little bit layman's terms. That way people understand. Second thing is, and I'm really happy to see, and under your leadership, that you recognize the fact that we are a budding and growing economy in the state of Texas. There's many institutions that are now at the forefront of doing research, great research, just like the MD Andersons of the world and the Parklands, and they're superb, and I'm so proud that they're in the state of Texas, and they're a great economic engine. But you also have organizations, as you pointed out already, such as UTRGV coming up, El Paso, Tyler soon will be online, that need nurturing. So therefore, they can become true assets to the state of Texas. And I thank you for recognizing that, and also I look forward to seeing those efforts come to fruition, those words. And when it comes to the University Advisory Committee, when I went over it, since we're on that topic, I noticed that every medical campus was present, and I know there's bylaws and rules to follow, but at some point, as I shared with our CEO, Wayne, the Dell Medical School, for instance, is also present here in our backyard, and also the UTRGV campus. And again, Tyler, when it comes on, it is only prudent to have those academic institutions, as novel or baby as they are, taking infant steps in research. It'd be good to have them on board as well in those positions. That way they can see how the big boys do it, but also get a little bit faster. So that's my comments, and I want to congratulate you and your staff on the beautiful job you're doing.
Thank you for the comments and the suggestions. Just to answer briefly, high impact, I guess all of us bring our own point of view on what that means.
Yes, sir.
What we mean, what I mean when I talk about high impact are discoveries that have real promise to connect to impacting on patients. And sometimes we have to take some opportunities that, like the one that I mentioned with Dr. Olson, where this is obviously a basic science discovery, but having his interaction with pediatric oncologists to see how that could potentially be connected to impact on their patients is what we're talking about here.
Yes, sir. Great. Thank you.
In that light, it's always very exciting to tell you about the new investigators who are being recruited to Texas with CPRIT support. You'll recall that there are three mechanisms: the established investigator mechanism for a senior established scientist. One candidate is being recommended, Dr. Carl Sheet, who is being recommended for recruitment from Northwestern University to University of Texas, San Antonio. He is a synthetic chemist who will bring an important complement to the established precision mechanism focus of the NCI Designated Cancer Center at UT Health San Antonio. So that is, I think, again, something that you're beginning to see at UT San Antonio with the recruitment of established investigators who are really bringing expertise that's forming focus on drug discovery there. With that in mind, the Rising Star candidate, Dr. Sean Olson, also being recruited to San Antonio, this time to the University of Texas Health Science Center there from the University of South Carolina. Dr. Olson is an eminent structural biologist, again, bringing this critical mass of, if you will, expertise to focus on drug discovery at San Antonio. Then new investigators that are being recruited to Texas, our first-time tenure track mechanism. The first is Dr. Anna Gustafson, who is being recruited to Rice from Stanford. She is a bioengineer who uses high-end microscopy to understand and discover intricacies of cancer cells. And again, Rice has done a very exceptional job of linking her with the cancer expertise at the Texas Medical Centers, in this case, MD Anderson and Dr. Ron DePino, to actually exploit, if you will, her innovations to focus on cancer. Dr. Eric Smith is a physician scientist who's being recruited to MD Anderson from Memorial Sloan Kettering. He's an expert in cellular therapy targeting multiple myeloma. And Adam Durbin is a pediatric oncologist being recruited from Dana-Farber Cancer Centers to UT Southwestern with a focus in novel therapeutics for neuroblastoma. That concludes the PIC recommendations for the 7 mechanisms that I've discussed.
Are there any questions for Dr. Wilson? Thank you. I will remind members that Mr. Burgess has certified compliance of the Academic Research Award process. It's my understanding that no Oversight Committee member reported any conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest that members have not reported? Members, you have a list of the applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC, the PIC, for the Academic Research Grant Awards. We will approve the PIC's recommendations if 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members present and able to vote do so. Dr. Wilson presented 7 Academic Research Award slates. Rather than taking a separate vote on the different grant mechanisms constituting 41 grant recommendations, I will ask for a vote to approve all the slates. If a member wants to consider one or more award recommendations individually, please make a motion to do so now. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's recommendations for the following Academic Research Grant Award mechanisms: Individual Investigator Research Awards, Individual Investigator Research Awards for Cancer in Children and Adolescents, Individual Investigator Awards for Clinical Translation, Individual Investigator Research Awards for Prevention and Early Detection, recruitment of first-time tenure-track faculty members, recruitment of established investigators, and recruitment of rising stars.
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I note for record that Dr. Hernandez did not review the recommendations before the meeting and did not vote on the recommendations today. I will entertain a motion delegating contract negotiation authority to the CEO and CPRIT staff, and to authorize the CEO to sign contracts on behalf of CPRIT.
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The chair now recognizes Ramona to provide the prevention program update and to introduce the Program Integration Committee's grant award recommendations.
Good morning, members. The prevention program update is behind tab 5 in your books. Fiscal year 2020, cycle 2 just recently closed on February 12th, and these award recommendations will be presented at the August 19th meeting. Importantly, in the update, CPRIT is forming a prevention advisory committee to assess the current program and to advise on additional opportunities to increase CPRIT's impact on cancer prevention and control in the state. 7 members are being recommended for appointment to the committee, and the detail of this roster and bios can be found behind tab 7. The first meeting of this committee will be held by conference call on March 9th. We welcome your attendance by phone if you're interested. If there are no questions on the program update, I'll now present the proposed prevention program awards for your consideration. The PIC is recommending 10 projects for fiscal year 2020 cycle 1, totaling about $13.5 million. The project descriptions can be found on page 41 of the proposed awards booklet. All of the projects address one or more of the prevention program priorities. Now, I'll just summarize the 10 projects briefly. There's one recommended project under the tobacco control and lung cancer screening mechanism to the University Health System in San Antonio for provision of tobacco cessation services to people living with HIV at 5 clinics in Bexar County. There are 5 expansion of services to rural and medically underserved populations that are being recommended. 1 for cervical cancer screening in 58 rural and frontier counties in West and South Texas. An exercise program from MD Anderson Cancer Center to improve the physical functioning and quality of life of sedentary cancer survivors. Next, a project to increase HPV vaccine uptake in 13 counties in Southeast Texas from UTMB. Another HPV project, this one from UT Health Science Center at Houston, that is based in the Houston public school system. And lastly, an expansion of UT Southwestern's colorectal cancer screening and navigation program to 57 counties in North and East Texas. There are 2 evidence-based cancer prevention services projects, both to UT Austin, one to provide outreach, education, and mobile mammography to women in Central Texas, and one project that will develop and implement a program for the recognition and treatment of unhealthy alcohol use in several clinics in Central Texas. 2 dissemination projects are recommended, one for a community health worker training tool and one to develop a training program on addressing tobacco control in behavioral health settings. And I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Any questions? I remind members that Mr. Burgess has certified compliance with the prevention award process. It is my understanding that no Oversight Committee member reported any conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest that members have not reported? Members, you have a list of applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC for the Prevention Grant Awards. We will approve the PIC's recommendations if 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members present and able to vote do so. Mrs. Majid presented 4 prevention award slates. Rather than taking a separate vote on the different grant mechanisms constituting 10 grant recommendations, I will ask for a vote to approve all the slates. If a member wants to consider one or more award recommendations individually, please make a motion to do so now. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's recommendations for the following prevention grant award mechanisms: tobacco control and lung cancer screening, expansion of cancer prevention services to rural and medically underserved populations, evidence-based cancer prevention services, and dissemination of CPRIT-funded cancer control interventions.
So moved.
All in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I note for the record that Dr. Hernandez did not review the recommendations before the meeting and did not vote on the recommendations today. I will entertain a motion delegating contract negotiation authority to the CEO and CPRIT staff and to authorize the CEO to sign the contracts on behalf of CPRIT.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The chair now recognizes Dr. Walker Peach to present the product development research update and award recommendations.
Good morning, members. If you would please draw your attention to tab 6. I'll be discussing the product development update as well as the PIC recommended awards. To begin with, the product development research applications for cycle 2020.1, you will find the metrics on table 1 of page 6-1. We had 40 applicants, 16 went through the in-person peer review process, 7 went through the due diligence, and we will be recommending to y'all 4 for a total of 12 million. And I'll be discussing in detail these award recommendations shortly. The cycle 2020.2, you can find on page 6.2. We opened that particular intake in November 2019 and closed that in January 29th of 2020. They are in process right now. We have 28 applications. The cycle is slightly less than the applications we had in the first cycle for the year. Peer review will take place in March of this year. We'll do the in-person presentations in April and make the award announcements in August of 2020. We will be asking for your approval to release the 2021 Product Development Research RFAs, request for applications. You can find them there on page 6-2. These are the same application mechanisms that we have used in the past. So this is for seed applications, for Texco and Relco applications. You can find the details on that page. Moving forward, I would like to talk a little bit about the Product Development Advisory Committee. We have had one in the past, but we are adding some new members, and you can find them in a table on 6.3, and you can also find their bio sketches under tab 7. And lastly, in my report, I'd like to bring you up to date on our Product Development Review Council. The PDRC resides over the entire peer review process for CPRIT's Product Development Research Program. It critically reviews all materials, including due diligence materials, and makes the final award recommendations to the PIC, and the PIC reviews that and makes the award recommendations to the Oversight Committee. The PDRC is critical in our process for both peer review at pre-award as well as post-award as the company moves through its goals and objectives. We have added 2 new members by the direction of our chair, Dr. Jack Jelkowski. The 2 new members are Kristen Setterdek and Janine Serraro. Dr. Setterdek has joined us already on February 1st, and Dr. Serrano will be joining on March 1st. So that brings a total of 8 members now to our review council. All right, and with that, I think that will address our workload issues in that review council.
Are there any questions for Dr. Walker-Peach? I remind members that Mr. Burgess is certified.
I haven't done the award yet.
Okay.
That's okay. That is the conclusion of my update.
That'll certainly shorten the meeting.
Yeah. My apologies.
No worries. So, members, would you please now turn to the proposed awards booklet, and you will find our chair's letter on page 78, detailing the recommendations from the PDRC to the PIC and now to the Oversight Committee. And on page 80 is the summary of all the recommendations. So we have 4 seed awards that we're recommending to the Oversight Committee today. And then if you will turn to page 66, we will begin with the overview of each one of these. So we have 4 seed applicants that we're recommending to the Oversight today. The first one on page 66 is Acilia Therapeutics. This is a Houston-based seed applicant. It is a spin-out of the University of Texas MD Anderson, and it is a drug development company. They have a novel antibody that increases the ability of dendritic cells to kickstart the immune reactions to better recognize cancer cells. Their initial disease indication is refractory malignancies. In other words, these are patients with no remaining curative options. They are focused first in solid tumors, breast, colon, melanoma, and they'd also like to investigate blood-related tumors as well. It is a spin out of the University of Texas MD Anderson. There are some contract contingencies we will be working with as we put the contract together with the company. They will have to complete their provisional patent filing and secure a license from the UT system. Additionally, the PDRC has recommended, I apologize, I got very bad allergies today, so my voice is not quite on par here, so apologies. Additionally, the PDRC has recommended some changes in the goals and objectives as originally proposed. And you can find those detailed in the chairman's letter starting on page 78. Moving now to our next proposed awardee, now on page 68. Texas Magnetic Imaging Technology, Inc. This is a Dallas-based seed applicant with a number of UT Southwestern faculty founders. It is a medical device company. They plan to offer a compact magnetic resonance scanner that will attach to conventional external beam radiation equipment. The company's scanner will allow real-time adjustment to existing radiation plans to account for changes in the anatomy during treatment. This is the critical part where their IP resides. Their initial disease indication is around lung cancer, but they plan to also look at other solid tumor types. They have already secured their license from the University of Texas Southwestern. They have one contract contingency related to PDRC's changes on some of their goals and objectives as outlined in our chairman's letter. Our third company proposal is a Dallas-based seed applicant. This is a drug development company. Dielectric Therapeutics has a novel compound that induces proteolysis, that selectively induces cancer cell death or increases cellular susceptibility to chemotherapy. Their first disease indication is T-cell leukemia as a single agent, and they will also be looking at small cell lung and breast cancers in combination with chemotherapy. The IP is licensed from the University of Kansas. The company plans to be based in Dallas and is there now and plans to continue there. The company does maintain research facilities at UT Health in San Antonio, as well as the University of Florida. Our contract contingencies are limited to some minor changes that the PDRC has recommended in their goals and objectives as the proposal was originally written. Our fourth proposed applicant award is on page 72, and this one goes to Barricade Therapeutics Corp. This is a Dallas-based seed applicant, a drug development company that is looking at a new class of highly specific drugs for colorectal cancer. These drugs selectively inhibit a mutated gene product found in greater than 80% of colorectal cancers. The mutation of the gene is one of the earliest events in the initiation and progression of the disease. Animal work with these compounds called TASINs have shown significant tumor reduction. The company will use our funding, CPRIT funding, if approved by the Oversight Committee, to fund a move into human clinical trials, human studies and trials. Of course, their first disease indication is colorectal cancer. It is a spin-out of UT Southwestern. And this is a very nice story for CPRIT because our colleagues in academic research originally funded the invention at the beginning and now it is flowing into product development funding to start the company. We love these types of stories and love to see more of them. There are a couple of contract contingencies, completion of an amendment on the current license to secure protection for the company's lead compound. That'll have to be amended. And some small changes in the goals and objectives as recommended by our Product Development Review Council. So in summary and in recommendation for Cycle 20.1, we had 40 applications, 16 went through peer review, 7 into diligence, and 4 seed awards for your consideration and approval today. The PDRC also had 1 no action applicant. So pending additional information from that applicant, we may present that to you in a future Oversight Committee meeting. So in total, we have 3 new drug development companies, 1 medical device company, and these 4 awards represent $11,996,760 in total award budget. And with that, I will entertain any questions y'all may have. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Walker-Peach?
Yes. One.
Go ahead.
You mentioned, and Dr. Wilson mentioned, in effect, follow-on CPRIT projects, right? This is the second stage of an earlier funding. Does the presence of previous CPRIT work give them any kind of leg up in the review process?
It does not.
So they have to clear
In
all
fact,
the same hurdles?
our reviewers don't even know that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
We know.
So, right.
Mm-hmm.
They still have to clear all the...
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have 2 questions.
Dr. Hernandez?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's great to see the institutions working together and all these great scientists coming out of Texas. And entrepreneurship. That's really nice. For every dollar that we supply, and I know every project is different. How much at risk? What are they putting in? Are they required to match 1 to 1, 2 to 1? What is it that typically?
Yeah, it's
occurs?
a 2 to 3. It's a 2 to 3 match. So it's 50% match. So if they ask for $3 million, they're going to have a match component of $1.5 million.
Got it.
Yep, and that's true for all of our mechanisms.
Great. And since we're believing in the product, I'm assuming that we're going to be having the state of Texas in some capacity going to have ownership, or they're going to have some benefit from besides making patients better, obviously. But
Right.
it is a business, so I'm assuming we're going to have some sort of agreement in that capacity.
So in our current agreements right now, there's a royalty stream back to the state of Texas, depending on what type of product it is.
Wonderful.
Drugs are slightly different than diagnostics. And in addition, that's kind of our kind of standard mechanism. There are some instances when there are second awards to the same company
Yes.
that we may take an equity position as well.
Wonderful. Because I'm a firm believer that we should be helping out the private sector in partnerships to move things along, and we will reap the benefits in many ways. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Now, I remind members that Mr. Burgess has certified compliance of the product development award process. It is my understanding that no oversight committee member reported any conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest that members have not reported? Members, you have the list of applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC for the Product Development Research Grant Awards. We will approve the PIC's recommendations if 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members present and able to vote do so. Dr. Walker Peach presented one award slate. Rather than taking a separate vote on the 4 grant recommendations, I will ask for one vote to approve all the recommendations. If a member wants to consider one or more award recommendations individually, please make a motion to do so now. I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's recommendations for the 4 seed awards for product development research.
So, second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I note for the record that Dr. Hernandez did not review the recommendations before the meeting and did not vote on the recommendations today. I will entertain a motion delegating contract negotiation authority to the CEO and to CPRIT staff, and to authorize the CEO to sign the contracts on behalf of CPRIT.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Members, Mr. Roberts notified the board on February 14th that he seeks authority to disperse grant funds in advance to the 4 companies we have just approved for awards. Are there any questions for Mr. Roberts regarding his request? Pursuant to the General Appropriations Act, Article 9, Section 4.03A, do I have a motion to authorize CPRIT to disperse grant funds via advance payments to DP 200033, DP 200046, DP 200018, and DP 200056 upon execution of the award contracts and the successful completion of tranches.
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Members, Dr. Walker Peach presented the proposed timeline in Product Development Research Program RFAs. CPRIT will release the first and second cycles of FY 2021. I will entertain a motion approving the proposed timeline and FY 2021 Product Development Research RFAs.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. We have nothing on the Scientific Research and Prevention Program Committee assignments. The chair recognizes Mr. Roberts to present the appointments to the advisory committees.
Thank you, Mr. Margot. At its February 14th meeting, the Nominations Subcommittee recommended that Presiding Officer D. Margot's proposed appointments to the Prevention Advisory Committee and the Product Development Advisory Committee be adopted. Additionally, 3 new members have been appointed to the University Advisory Committee, about which no Oversight Committee action is needed for those appointments. The appointments were favorably reviewed by the relevant oversight subcommittees last week. On behalf of Mr. Margot, I request approval as noted.
Are there any questions for Mr. Roberts? Is there a motion to approve the appointments to the Prevention and Product Development Advisory Committees?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So let's take up the next item.
You don't want to skip it
Let's go for it now.
totally? The chair now recognizes Ms. Eckel to discuss the proposed rule amendments to Chapter 703.
Good morning, members. The rules are located behind tab 10 of your award packet. There are two proposed rule amendments, both in Chapter 703. The first one is in 703.14, and that would require grantees, product development and research, academic research grantees who are required to show matching funds to provide all their supporting documentation at the time that they submit those matching verification forms to CPRIT. And CPRIT would not review or approve any forms until all that supporting documentation had been submitted, just to allow CPRIT, make it easier to review those expenditures at the time that the form is submitted. And the second proposed change is in 703.23, and it would allow CPRIT to withhold at least 10% of the final payment to a grantee who is receiving payments by advanced funds. Again, just encouraging those grantees that receive advanced funds to properly close out their contracts and submit all their final reports and have CPRIT approve all those reports before their final payment is dispersed. There's also a process in the proposed language to allow a grantee to request a lower percentage be withheld and to justify that request to CPRIT. If y'all approve these rules today, we'll submit them to the Texas Register for public comment and then bring them back at the May Oversight Committee meeting. And that is it for the rules.
Any questions from Ms. Eckel? Yes. Craig?
Cameron, just a quick question on matching funds.
Mm-hmm.
What form do those matching funds have to be in? Are they cash deposits, IOUs? Do all the funds have to be available upfront at the time of the award, or are they provided sequentially as matching funds?
So initially, the grantee will complete a matching certification saying that they will have the matching funds available. And then that's followed by the matching verification form where they are documenting their expenditures, showing that they have spent their own money towards the grant award project.
Okay.
Chairman. Ms. Eckel, just now the lawyers get to have something to say.
I knew I couldn't escape.
Exactly. Right. Well, this is lawyer to lawyer, you know. You said section 703.14. The memo mentioned 703.11.
It is 11. Thank you for calling out my mistake on camera.
I specialize in that.
Appreciate it.
Call anytime.
I'm going to remember that one.
Is there any more nitpicking? Members, is there a motion to approve the publication of the proposed changes to Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 703, the Texas Register?
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We can go back to internal audit. I tried to skip it completely, but we're back to internal audit. All right. I know. We forget that. Thanks. The chair recognizes Mr. Graves to present a status update on internal audit activities.
Good morning. Although it I'll be here. I'll keep it brief, and it'll be like I was never here. So
We salute you.
I can fix that.
So I do only have a few brief comments based on where we stand. Last time we presented to you, we gave you the 2020 fiscal year internal audit plan, had some general date outlines in it, and really the only change that we have is the specific dates that we are planning to do the audits that have been confirmed with the agency. And so the first one starts is our governance audit. That's actually coming up here in just a few weeks in March. And then directly after that, we actually skip to some follow-ups for the communications and the state reporting follow-ups that will occur mid to late March. And then the date change or the date update for the disaster recovery and business continuity planning consulting is going to occur in May, along with the follow-ups over information security. And so those are really the only changes as to from what we presented last time. We're just now getting rolling and starting with our internal audit plan for this year. The summary schedule that you also have provided, there's been no change in that since we haven't performed any follow-up procedures or any audits for fiscal year 20 as of yet. So that is all I have for you. So it'd be like never here.
Any questions for Mr. Graves? Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, it's my understanding that we have a request for public comment by Susan Dawson. She would like to discuss planning for CPRIT's next decade of activities. CPRIT has posted this discussion as agenda item 14. I will ask Mr. Roberts to present his report for agenda item 14, CPRIT 2.0 now, and then we will hear from Ms. Dawson. Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. Margot. As discussed during the subsidy program subcommittees this past week, the planning outline on page 9-2 was developed by staff to develop the 2022 program priorities concurrently with a vision for CPRIT 2.0, if you will, over the next 9 months. The vision for CPRIT 2.0 results from the approval of Proposition 6 last November that authorizes an additional $3 billion for CPRIT grants and operations. Although no action by you is necessary now, I want to encourage you to participate in as many meetings as your time permits. The timeline provides multiple opportunities to get input from you, our standing advisory committees, program review councils, state leadership and the legislature, advocates, and most importantly, the general public. For the benefit of people in the audience or watching on the internet, after the May 20 Oversight Committee meeting, CPRIT staff will prepare the first document indicating initial directions of the preliminary conversations. This will provide something tangible to respond to in future open forums across the state. Currently, the only certain date and location for one of these forums is noon on July 31st at the conclusion of our Innovations Conference in Austin. At your desk is a schedule of meetings set so far. More are being considered. Although times, physical locations, or agendas are not available yet, this list should allow you to begin arranging your schedules to attend, if so inclined. Please let me know which ones you would like to attend. Due to state quorum requirements, no more than 4 of you can attend a single meeting. If it appears that a quorum may occur, we will need to adjust that situation as called for. Finally, during the subcommittee briefings on this process, it was suggested that the Oversight Committee may want to have a public work session or public retreat. If this is the case, although a decision does not have to be made today, setting a date quickly would expedite its implementation. I will stop here. That obviously is a very quick overview of the schedule. I'll be happy to try and address any questions that you may have, and you can certainly expect to receive specific regular updates on this entire process. This is fun stuff, folks. Your staff is really excited about doing this. I think that of those of you that I've talked to directly, there's a lot of excitement about this. There's quite a bit of buzz across the state. Thanks to the voters of Texas. Let's look forward to the next 10 years.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Roberts? Ms. Dawson, would you please come to the table?
Thank you. I have a PowerPoint that should come up. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with the Oversight Committee. It's been a few years since I've had the chance to offer some ideas from other sectors, and as a cancer survivor myself, and as someone who is out in the community a lot with ideas about how the Oversight Committee and staff can take advantage of the massive responsibility that you have been given by the voters of the state of Texas. And now, as Mr. Roberts has said, we have a new $3 billion opportunity, which is very exciting and is unprecedented any place in the country or the world other than federal dollars that come down as an opportunity for the state of Texas. So at this juncture, and especially given the plans that the CPRIT staff have laid out about committee meetings and public meetings and other planning happening over the next year, I wanted to just offer some ideas that I have gained through talking to others around the community of the state of Texas. And the first and most important thing is that I hope that you will be bold. Is that this is a new opportunity. The first time we had $3 billion as a state, again, it was unprecedented, but it was new. It was something where we were trying to figure it out. We were trying to set the rules and regulations and reviews and understand how to leverage those dollars. And as you've seen in multiple audit reports and reports coming from staff, they have been leveraged very well. But now with the chance for another decade and another $3 billion, I think it is a unique opportunity to take all that's been learned over the last decade and to be very bold in doing and investing those dollars. And some specifically, because I've talked to many around the state, most people don't understand what CPRIT is. Most people don't understand. Many people have never heard of it. If they have heard of it, they know it's that cancer thing. They don't think of it as research invested. They don't understand that process. They understand their neighbor across the street who died last year of cancer and what could we have done differently. They understand their sister who was just diagnosed with stage 2 and what can we do differently, and are those guys who are managing those dollars going to have an impact on my family and my neighbors. And in order to do that, I would put forth a few ideas. More specifically, is to consider a greater focus on prevention. Prevention is 10% of the funds as a mandate. There are ways that with the upcoming sunset review that could be adjusted then, but beyond those adjustments, there are opportunities to look at early screening and prevention as part of research grants. And I would posit that any cancer avoided not only is better for the population of the state of Texas, but is much better investment, is a much higher return on investment, and we need to continuously look on that. And there are a lot of lessons learned over the last 10 years in the prevention grants that have been made. Also to engage community providers at a greater level. Again, speaking as someone who goes to the doctor all the time now, I can tell you that most of those who receive cancer treatment in the state of Texas, the great majority, are not at academic research institutions. They are at community providers in the field. That may be hospitals, that may be small private organizations. Typically, these organizations where the rubber meets the road for patients are far removed from the research investments that we're making. How do we bring them closer into being able to be part of those research opportunities, part of those system building opportunities? Again, part of the exclusion happens from the match requirements of your grants. That could only be adjusted after the sunset review, but there are other ways to look for greater collaborations between our research institutions and the community providers who are touching the majority of patients. Which brings me to my next point is focusing research on more intense collaboration and data sharing among research partners. I'm very excited about the $18 million that was set aside recently for the Collaborative Action Center around liver cancer and the opportunity to define not just a multi-investigator grant, but a network of researchers and a network of investment opportunities who could share data with one another, who could convene. I think we can build on that. I think we can take those early lessons. Dr. Wilson is looking at it. He's excited about what we're seeing, but it is still early on. What can we learn from that? How can we apply that better? Can we put collaboration as a definition ahead of time before we let research grants so that researchers understand what kind of data can be shared, so that they can understand that we're going to publish real time every failure, not just every success, that we're going to learn as quickly as we can and build the research more quickly into translation, into action in the community. And then finally, to look at not just funding medical research, which I think CPRIT has an excellent track record and history of, but to look at research more specifically on health delivery. As we know, in the United States, we have the most expensive healthcare system in the world. And yet our outcomes don't show that. We don't have the highest life expectancy. We don't have the highest life expectancy after cancer is diagnosed. We have a great deal that we can do, not just in medical research, but how do we deliver healthcare? How do we move towards value-based models? How do we put the patient at the center of the care that's being offered? Even though we have the best doctors in the world and the best research in the world, that doesn't today transfer into the best healthcare systems. And that's a real opportunity, I believe, for CPRIT. As you think about all of these things, I think back to when CPRIT was formed over a decade ago. And while I have no doubt but that Wayne and Kristen and others maybe who were there might wince at this, there was a real opportunity at the beginning. It was called CTNet. Clinical Trials Network. It was the opportunity to bring the entire state of Texas behind a common clinical trial system where everything that was going on a clinical trial, not everything, but most things would be available to patients across the state of Texas. So imagine someone in far west Texas who is dying of cancer, a very rare cancer. The only opportunity is a study going on at MD Anderson. There's no way that they have the transportation and the means to access that study. Imagine the woman in Bastrop who could get down to START. It's only 80 miles away, but she has 2 disabled children at home. And she can't leave those children, but she could go to Texas Oncology in Bastrop or Seton in Smithville. If we created something like that today, a son of CTNet, something different, we could achieve the ability to have better community providers involved, more collaboration from the start, more data sharing, the ability to change the health delivery systems, at least in clinical trials in that space. That may not be the right answer, and it flamed out, as it turns out, but it was a great aspirational idea. It was something that would really, really change the system of delivery of care as well as research, as well as driving to patient outcomes much faster. And it's the kind of opportunity that I think that if we want to be bold going forward, we should think about those kind of opportunities. And so as you progress through the next year, I would ask you to think about, we have now a decade of learning under our belts. We have a whole new generation of doctors with new ideas. We have better sharing and information technology that was ever available. We have the opportunity to take all that we've learned and take $3 billion and make it as impactful as possible. And I hope and trust that you will take the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take questions?
Any questions? Greg?
Thank you for your presentation. I just, one of the things of the many things that you said that caught my attention was talking about efficient healthcare delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something we're all sensitive to. And I was just wondering what exactly you meant by efficient. When I hear that term, I think of the U.S. Spending about 20% of GDP on healthcare,
right,
which is unsustainable. And so when you talk about efficient, are you talking about efficient in terms of dollars or efficient in terms of how fast one gets care? I was just wondering what you were trying to emphasize in that portion of your presentation.
Thank you. I believe efficiency both in terms of patient outcomes. There are many, many patients who don't have access or have access, especially in cancers that are very complex, later than they need to, and or without the kind of care coordination that would help them not slip through the cracks. But I also think of it very much in terms of dollars. One of my professors, Huey Reinhardt, wrote a great book that if you haven't read it, you should, called Priced Out, about the inefficiencies of the healthcare system and how many dollars go not to our doctors and not to care delivery, but to systems that we've built around it that don't benefit the patient. And so if you look at the Texas 2036 data, especially in the state of Texas, it is drastically unsustainable what we're spending on healthcare. So we have to change it. We have no choice. We have to move to things like value-based models, but we're not doing it well enough and fast enough. And to me, that may be something that your research dollars could kickstart.
Thank you. We're thinking along a similar line.
Good.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go to item 16 now. Chair now recognizes Ms. Doyle to discuss the proposed changes to the Oversight Committee bylaws.
Members, you have a memo from the legal department in your packet. This reflects the guidance that we have received from the Attorney General's office in terms of Oversight Committee members participating in Oversight Committee meetings by video conference. If that is something that the Oversight Committee is willing to consider, then we would need to make changes to the Oversight Committee bylaws. And so I have included the changes behind the memo. And you can see there in red line. And mainly the change would be to allow the presiding officer to participate by video conference if he delegates the authority to preside over the meeting to his vice presiding officer or to the next person who's available at the Oversight Committee to preside in person at the location that we have listed on our meeting notice. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions about that?
I have a question, Counselor.
Yes, Ambrosio.
when the mayor is busy in El Paso and he can't make it, and the vice chair gets caught up in flight, who's the next Alexander Haig? How does that work? I just want to make sure I clearly understand it.
So if you look to our bylaws on section 5.5, which is page 11-16 in your book, if both the chair and the vice chair are unable to attend, then the chairperson of the Scientific Research Subcommittee presides. And I believe that's Dr. Rice. Oh, no, it's Dr. Patel.
Dr. Patel.
Okay, so if Dr. Patel, as the vice chair, won't be able to be there, so then the next person is the chairperson of product development, and that is Craig. If Craig can't attend, yeah, then we're.
So it is an oversight.
Well, theoretically,
It is always an oversight.
theoretically, we have a quorum if they're by phone, but we just have to have one individual here physically. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
So we could have a Lone Ranger here. Rice would have to be here. Yeah, we would mandate.
We would need somebody.
We would mandate that Rice must live here.
Or Angelos.
But the rest of us could participate.
Angelos too.
Oh, Angelo,
Yes.
that's right. Oh, Angelo, yeah. We'll make sure we have a
I'll move.
require.
You'll move to Austin?
Sure.
He really wants to be chair again. I mean, really, it's amazing.
And then I keep getting put farther and farther away.
Yeah. Dr. Rice.
I'm just going to think out loud and a little bit, maybe differently on this, only because I think there's such a big value of us being together and having the relationship of our conversations and the pieces of this that are so important. And I know that we all appreciate teleconferencing, and I mentioned this at the subcommittee, and I'm not opposed to it, so I don't want to be saying that, but you wouldn't want this to all of a sudden become sort of a thing where the quorum is always virtual. There's one person sitting here, and lots of side discussions and closed sessions or whatnot wouldn't be available to us. So I just make that point that I think there's a real value in the goal of us being here. A. B. We've had close calls, but we've never actually not had a quorum. So we're not really solving a problem that's been an imminent problem. I think Mr. Roberts has on occasion, worried, and we've maybe had that issue, but that's out there. So anyway, I just expressed the concern of the as the one that has to commute the least or the shortest distance. That we worry about that.
Well, let me play devil's advocate respectfully. All of our committee meetings are by phone. So we're used to doing that. Okay. And then secondly, the issues are that some of us, if we couldn't make it, could not participate at all. So I think the issue is based on David's travel, Brosio's travel, and my travel. If my flight had been canceled last night, I would not have made it. I had to go through council and then do it. So I think this is a welcome respite for us, so to speak, and very necessary. I mean, I've asked in the past where we had conflicts and I could not make it in. I said, can I participate by phone? And the response was, no, you cannot. Christian said, you must be here. And it was an impossibility to be here, so I missed the meeting. So I think this is a welcome change. Are there any other questions for Mrs. Doyle?
Could I just
Greg?
respond?
Yeah.
Or, just to say, I support the idea. I didn't mean to imply that I didn't support it, but I just would hope that the tradition continues, that we really make it.
Oh, I think we understand that.
Thank you.
Greg?
Christian, just a quick question. Is the attendance requirements, is that state regulation?
I'm sorry.
Is it a state regulation that for all committees, or is it peculiar to CPRIT?
No, for any governing board of a state agency, you're required to attend in person, but you can participate by video conference to constitute a quorum. That's part of the Texas Open Meetings Act.
So we're just kind of catching up.
There are requirements for you to attend the meetings, both in person and video conferencing, if approved, would meet that requirement. I forget exactly what it is. I think maybe 3 meetings or something like that. There's supposed to be some kind of removal action.
Unexcused absences.
So there's other committees, state committees like us, where people are participating by video conference.
I don't know personally whether
The answer is yes.
I assume that that's the case. I haven't seen it. Part of the problem is that this legislation was passed, I believe, 2 sessions ago, but in a very unusual occurrence, 2 different bills were both passed on the same issue. They were both signed into law and they had slightly conflicting provisions. So many committees were reluctant to use the video conferencing because it was not clear, particularly the issue about the presiding officer and the attendance of the presiding officer in person. The Attorney General has gotten comfortable enough with the law as it stands now to provide guidance. And once they've done that, I expect that we will see that more. Now, part of this is also that you will need to, as Oversight Committee members, be aware of the requirements on your end, the electronic requirements, to make sure that you have the capability to participate. And we'll need to know, obviously, so that we can have a 27-inch monitor here in place, like Brady Bunch for your head. We have to see your face and your facial movements at all times. If you leave the video conference for any reason, and we need your participation to make quorum, then we won't have quorum. Those are some of the more specific requirements. But I would encourage, if the Oversight Committee does move to amend their bylaws to allow this as a possibility, I would encourage all of you to communicate with us so that we can point you to the Department of Information Resources requirements, and if necessary, work with you to make sure that you've got that capability.
Mr. Montgomery.
Just briefly, we have not been able to do this before because it was not permitted. It's only recently the law has changed to permit this.
It's only recently that they've put something in place. And teleconferences still are not allowed. It's video conference because you can see your face and how you react to comments.
If I can add one point, there have been a number of agencies that have received specific authority to do this. We were not one of them.
To have teleconference.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Members, is there a motion to approve the changes to the Oversight Committee bylaws?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The chair recognizes Mr. Chris Cutrone to provide the communications report.
Good morning. Tab 12 is where my communications update is, and I'm just going to be real quick here. The major update that I wanted to give you all is about social media. Pretty much since last summer, we've implemented a very robust social media operation with content generation and engagement with our followers. We've significantly increased our followers, partially because we saw that, especially on Twitter and Facebook, a lot of our community, whether that's grantees or stakeholders, were very active. Part of this strategy has been to relaunch our LinkedIn page. We did that last June, and it's really been a success. In the last 6 months, we've more than doubled our LinkedIn presence, significantly gaining new followers. And we're also seeing a very high engagement rate across all three of the platforms. So we're really engaging our stakeholders, really engaging our grantees. So that's good. I think we're going to always look towards the future of how we can engage people with outside of that sphere some more. So that's all I really have. So if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cutrone? Yeah, Dr. Names.
Are you doing this organically yourself, or is a third party doing the social media?
I work with Han Public, our communications consultant, and they help me with content generation.
Got it.
And I actually do the posts and the editing.
Oh, you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the different platforms you chose, I guess, because I'm sure the mayor has seen it himself, every generation is different in what application they use. So which ones are you finding? Did you decide on Facebook, Twitter, hashtag? What are you using? Which media platforms?
We use all three. We use Twitter, Facebook, we use LinkedIn, and we also use YouTube for when we produce videos. And we produce a lot of our own content, whether that's videos or infographics, but we also use a lot of our grantees' assets too, because there's a lot out there. And the main thing is really to amplify what our grantees are doing to shine a spotlight on them.
Yes, sir. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Craig, and then
Just a quick question. Does the media exposure expose us to hacking or people getting into our confidential systems?
I really couldn't speak to that. That would be more of an IT question.
Actually, I'd prefer not to. We'll talk to you about it offline.
Mr. Angelo.
My question is, given that we're using Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, what is actually the measure of success there? What gives us the most click-throughs to the articles or the website? Which social site is that?
Well, we are not able to pay for ads or boost. So part of our success, I believe, is when we work with our partners to amplify our posts. So I think that to me is a measure of success because they have many more followers than we do. And they have less constraints on what they can do with social media. So to me, that's always where I see our most success.
If that is the measure, then which one of the platforms has provided the most engagement of?
Twitter by far.
Twitter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I put stats in this week's update and from last month too. And I do that recurring in all of your memos.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody cut any grammatical errors from Mr. Cutrone on any of his writing? Just want to double check. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, but I'm not telling.
Yeah, I do. That's what I was checking. Give you an opportunity.
At least not on camera.
The chair recognizes Ms. McConnell to present the Chief Operating Officer's report.
Good morning, members. So I just wanted to highlight some items in my report. we are on track with our budget. We did receive approval for the transfer from the award cancer research grants budget line item to the grant review and award operations budget line item in November from the Legislative Budget Board. That transfer was $2.4 million. So that rounded out our operating budget for the year. And also, with respect to our transfer to the Department of State Health Services, there was an increase by the legislature during the last session of almost $150,000. So we are now transferring $3.1 million per year. We received some additional revenue sharing payments in the first quarter, almost $30,000. But our total revenue sharing payments remain around $3.7 million. With our debt issuance, in the first quarter, we issued $64.3 million in commercial paper notes. I also included the issuance in January of another tranche of $52 million. That actually brought up our overall commercial paper issuance up to about $248 million under the current liquidity that's provided by the controller, which is $250 million. So we've reached basically the limit. So to be able to issue the remaining $115 million that we're going to need for this year, the Texas Public Finance Authority will be refunding our commercial paper as long-term debt in April to open up the capacity back to the $250 million. So then we will be able to issue the remaining $115 for the year. One thing that I didn't mention in my memo, but we did the state budget cycle has now started. All the agencies received budget instructions for the strategic plan in early February from the Legislative Budget Board and the Governor's Office. So our strategic plan will be due June 1st. We'll be presenting that to you in May. And then we will also be presenting our legislative appropriations request in a draft format because we won't have it finalized until some point over the summer since those instructions have not yet been issued. But with respect to the strategic plan, that also covers our performance measures that we're required by the state to have. We don't anticipate any changes to our performance measures or budget structure. The last item is our Innovations Conference update, and I did lay out our program, which I think will be a very stimulating conference program in my memo. And it rounded out what we had I announced earlier that our three kind of anchor speakers are Dr. Jim Allison, Dr. Robert Croyle, and Dr. Nancy Chang. But we do have all of the other sessions laid out, including the one that Wayne mentioned earlier, the discussion on CPRIT 2.0 on July 31st. But one thing I'd like to highlight is that the majority of presenters at our conference will be CPRIT grantees. So I think that's very exciting. And so I'm really looking forward to this conference. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Connell? David?
So with the issue with the walking quorum, may we all attend this meeting? Or are we going to have a called meeting that we...
We'll figure it out. Kristen will figure it out.
Yeah, we can take care of it, but it is helpful to let us know ahead of time so that we can do things like post it as a public meeting or...
So the 2 days as a public meeting, or...
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
If we get where 5 oversight committee members are going to attend.
There's precedence for this for other
Yes.
agencies. So we'll figure it out. We want y'all to be there.
Craig?
Just a quick question I probably should have asked Wayne a little bit earlier. At the meeting, is there any reason to have a board organizational meeting to talk about CPRIT 2.0? We've talked about the 10 meetings on the sheet of paper, but I didn't see any oversight committee discussion of CPRIT 2.0.
Right. I briefly touched upon it at the end of my presentation. I do think the conference provides an opportunity the afternoon of the second day, but I always think it's a good idea for the Oversight Committee together in order to discuss planning issues like this and other issues as well. It's quite often difficult to bring all of you together. That's why I would encourage that if it's wanted from you folks that we identify a date so we can begin planning for it. I think after we had our discussion, and y'all may think differently, that if we do this, it would probably be better to at least be after June 1st, so we can absorb the advisory committee's testimony to you at the May meeting, and have a little bit more in mind and documents for you to respond to. I think that inevitably we're going to need to have a long meeting in August, either a 2-day meeting or a long one. I personally think it's extremely important that the general public have an opportunity to sit at this table or a similar one in order to look you folks in the eye and tell you what they think. And if they can do it 2 or 3 times, even better. But we encourage as much transparency as we can. And I would highly suspect that we will get interesting, viable recommendations that we would not get otherwise than through a public meeting.
I noticed on the agenda for that meeting on the 31st, you've got a 12:30 to 2 p.m. lunch, which says CPRIT 2.0 discussion.
Yes.
That's just for the participants there at the lunch. That's what's anticipated, not us.
So how we will do that is, the CPRIT 2.0 discussion would be open to the public as well. We would have a box lunch for conference registrants, so they would be able to get it based on their badge. And then, in the Austin Convention Center, there are other places where the public could get refreshments if they wanted during the lunch, but that would be the separation. But
so this would be the public comment on CPRIT 2.0.
Yes.
Participants. So
yes.
It might behoove us, those that can be there, be there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they would not be charged admission to the conference portion of it.
Yeah. Dr. Rice?
I'm just reflecting, and Wayne, you've said it, I think, twice now, but it does seem like to me this is kind of the topic that probably should be brought forth in a dedicated kind of afternoon function or something like that with this group. It's the last thing maybe people want to hear. Maybe it's something that could happen after an oversight committee meeting for a couple hours, maybe 3 hours, a little bit. We've done this before, as you know, with when we met several years ago in a different location. Anyway, I just
frankly,
feel like
as you say that, it could be done after the May 20th Oversight Committee. In addition to this, I do think that when we get closer to the end, that August meeting is going to be ideal to, it certainly won't be finalized, but it will be far enough along to where we can get, final feedback from the public for your adoption at the November meeting.
So maybe that's the kind of the time frame, but at least be some kind of a forum where we could unhurriedly think about it and talk about it together, and maybe also through subcommittees.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you. Let's see, we go to 19. I propose that Dr. Hernandez join the following subcommittees: academic research and the prevention subcommittees. Members, is there a motion to approve the new subcommittee appointments?
So moved. Second.
All in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, let's see. At this time, the Oversight Committee will move into closed session to take up agenda items 20 and 21. We go into closed session pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071, and Texas Health and Safety Code, Section 102.2631, to consult with General Counsel and to discuss an ongoing compliance investigation. The Oversight Committee members will move to the anteroom at this time to convene in closed session. The following CPRIT staff shall join the Oversight Committee in the closed session: Mr. Roberts, Ms. Dole, Mr. Burgess, and Ms. McConnell. The time is approximately 10:39. And we're not going to take up any other actions after this. We're finished. Motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
11:25.
At 11:25. For the record.
Yes, ma'am.
I have your bag.
Okay.
And then lunch money.
Oh yeah, you want $50?
We do this on camera?
Yeah, I think we should.
It's a bet.
Here, wait.
Thank
Remember who you got it from?
Yes, sir. No.
All right. Is there any action from? There's somebody just say there's no action.
No.
No action.
No action.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, G.